The house felt suffocating, your anger and frustration boiling over, as you stood in the middle of the living room facing your parents. I hate this. I absolutely hate this. Your voice rang out, shaking with emotion. How could you do this to me, marrying me off to him, a cold, silent CEO who is a divorcee with a 4-year-old son? I'm not ready for this. Your parents stood there, their faces betraying no emotion, not even a hint of guilt. They looked at each other as if this was a decision they had long since made. You could see the cold practically in their eyes. We gave our word to Jungkook's parents. They have been kind to us and we must honor that. You must understand he is very wealthy. This marriage will benefit you in ways you don't even realize. We have seen the way he's been running his company, his stable, your father added, his voice edged with finality. And his past, well, it doesn't matter anymore. You will have a secure future with him. You felt your heart sink. I don't care about his money, you snapped, feeling the tears rise in your eyes. What about my happiness? What about me? You have sacrificed my life for the sake of your promises and his wealth. Your mother sighed softly, her face softening just a little. You don't understand now, but in time you will. Jungkook will take care of you and you will be grateful for it. He may be a divorcee, but that doesn't change anything. He is a good man. You clenched your fists in frustration. You had been working under Jungkook for the past year, and the man you'd gotten to know was cold, distant, and always silent. He never let anyone close, especially you. His strict, no nonsense attitude at work made him seem unapproachable and unfeeling. Now you were being forced to marry him, and there was no escaping it, no matter how hard you tried. No matter how much you hated inside, you wouldn't even imagine being married to someone like him. Someone was emotionally unavailable. You had heard the rumors. Jungkook had been the reason his wife left him. He was distant, cold-hearted, and he hadn't known how to make his marriage work. His wife, tired of his lack of affection, had walked away. You didn't want to marry a man like that, especially not one who already had a child. I deserve better than this, you shouted, your voice breaking. I deserve a man who will love me. Not someone who's broken and has nothing to offer. A man who has already had his chance at love and lost it. Your parents exchanged a brief, quiet glance, but they didn't argue further. Your mother stepped forward and gently cubed her face. We did this for your future, my dear. Jungkook may seem distant, but in time you will learn to love him. And you will learn to love his son too. You pulled away, feeling suffocated by their words. How could they do this? How could they not see how miserable this was making you? But in the end, their words had power. You were their daughter. You had to obey. It was your wedding day, but it felt nothing like the dream you had imagined. Instead of a grand celebration with hundreds of guests, the ceremony was small, private, and intimate. Just your parents, Jungkook's parents, and his young son Jungsu. The feeling of being trapped in a life you didn't choose weighed heavily on you. The venue was a beautiful, quiet chapel, but it felt cold to you with its polished wood floors and shining white candles. The smell of fresh flowers hung in the air, their beauty masking the emptiness you felt inside. Jungkook stood at the altar, looking every bit the silent CEO he always was. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, and his cold, emotionless gaze never once met yours. You barely noticed the priest as he went through the formalities. When the priest finally turned to you and asked, "Do you take Jungkook to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Your heart raced to your mind, a storm of confusion and fear. The weight of the words crushed you. You hadn't known this man for long, and the thought of spending your life with him was unbearable. He had his own past, his own scars, and the last thing you wanted was to be tied to a man who was emotionally distant. You glanced at him for the first time since you entered the chapel. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his jaw clenched tight. There was no comfort in his gaze, no warmth. The silence stretched on as you stood there, struggling to process everything. Then finally, with a breath you didn't even know you were holding, you whispered, "I do." Jungkook's lips parted and he gave a barely perceptible nod as he responded with the same cold words, "I do." The ring was slid onto your finger, its cold metal, a stark reminder of the commitment you had just made. The ceremony was over almost as quickly as it had begun, and you couldn't shake the sense of numbness that washed over you. There was no joy in the verbs you had just exchanged, no celebration in the air, only a heavy silence that enveloped the room. After the brief ceremony, you and Jungkook stepped out of the chapel together, accompanied by your parents and his parents smiled with pride, congratulating you both, their words polite but empty. Your parents, though equally pleased, seemed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside you. They had arranged this marriage and they were content. They didn't understand your hesitation, your fear. Jungkook, silent as ever, led the way to the waiting black car. Jungsu, his 4-year-old son, walked beside him, clutching his father's hand. The sight of them together should have warmed your heart, but all it did was add to your confusion. The weight of it all, the marriage, the child, the man you barely knew, felt like a burden you couldn't bear. Jungsu looked up at you with innocent, hopeful eyes as he climbed into the car. "Are you my mom now?" he asked, his voice light and curious. The question sent a pang of guilt through your chest. You looked at Jungkook, who glanced at you briefly, his expression unreadable. Neither of you responded, and the silence in the car deepened. You sat in the back seat beside Jungkook while Jungsu sat between you both, looking up at you with wide eyes. His small hand rested on your lap, and for a moment you felt a flicker of warmth from his innocence, but it was fleeting. Your mind couldn't stop racing with the reality of your situation. You tried to look out of the window to avoid the weight of his gaze, but his hand remained on your lap. It felt like a chain, a reminder of what you had just committed to. You couldn't bring yourself to move it, but you also couldn't bring yourself to reach out and connect with him. Jungkook remained silent, his eyes on the road. He didn't acknowledge either of you. His silence was suffocating. After what felt like an eternity, the car finally reached the gates of Jungkook's mansion. The estate was enormous, more like a palace than a house. The towering gates opened with a low groan, and the car drove up the long, winding driveway. The mansion loomed ahead with its cold, grand facade and windows that seemed to stare down at you. You swallowed hard as you stepped out of the car. This would be your new home now. Jungkook got out first, his steps purposeful and steady, while Jungsu followed closely behind, still holding his father's hand. You hesitated, standing frozen at the front of the mansion, the overwhelming sense of dread and suffocation threatening to consume you. Jungkook turned and gestured to the stairs that led up to the front door. "Upstairs, right bedroom," he said, his tone flat, as if nothing had changed, as if this was all part of the plan. You shook your head, unable to stop yourself. "I want a separate room," you said, your voice more forceful than you felt. Jungkook sighed, as if irritated by your request. "That's your bedroom. The only room left is mine." You bit your lip, fighting back the tears. Jungsu, who had been unusually quiet now, tugged at your sleeves. "Can I stay with you, Oma?" he asked softly, looking up at you with big, expectant eyes. Your heart broke for him, but you couldn't do it, not yet. "I'm tired. I need to freshen up," you said quickly, trying to escape the suffocating situation. Jungsu's face fell, but he didn't protest. He followed Jungkook upstairs, leaving you standing at the doorway, overwhelmed and alone. Inside, the mansion was just as grand as you had imagined. Every step felt like it took you further away from the life you wanted. You walked up the stairs, trying to ignore the tightness in your chest, and entered the bedroom Jungkook had assigned to you. The room was beautiful, lavish, but it felt empty. You felt empty. How had you ended up here, married to a man who had already lost love with a child, who was now looking to you for affection you couldn't give? You sat on the edge of the bed, your mind racing. This wasn't the life you had wanted. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The days following the wedding passed in a blur. You continued to live in the same house as Jungkook and Jungsu, but there was no connection. You felt like a stranger in this family. You moved through the motions of your life, getting up, going to work, and coming home, always avoiding any real interaction with Jungsu or Jungkook. Jungsu, however, remained persistent. Every day he tried to get closer to you. He would ask you to play with him, to watch his cartoons, to join him for meals, but every time you had find an excuse. I'm busy, you would say. I need to work. One evening, as you sat reading in the living room, Jungsu bounded into the room, holding a stuffed bear. Yoma, Yoma, he called, running towards you with excitement. Do you want to play with me? You looked up at him, feeling your heart tug, but all you could say was, I'm really tired, Jungsu. Maybe later, okay? He deflated, the enthusiasm in his eyes fading slightly. Okay, he said quietly, turning away, but not before giving you one last hopeful look. As he walked away, your chest tightened. Why couldn't you just be like any other mother, eager to embrace her child? But you felt nothing but suffocation every time he came close. The next morning, as usual, Jungkook prepared breakfast in the kitchen. You weren't sure why, but no matter how cold you were towards him, he always made sure you had a meal. It was a silent routine now. He would cook, you would eat, no words exchanged between you. Jungkook placed a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of you as you sat down at the kitchen table. His eyes lingered on you for a moment, as if trying to gauge something, but he had nothing. You sighed, not meeting his gaze. Thanks, you said, though it felt hollow. Jungkook sat down across from you and began eating his own meal. He didn't speak, just quietly going through the motions. You could feel the weight of his silence, but for some reason you didn't feel as resentful anymore. His presence was somehow soothing despite the lack of words. So, how is work? Jungkook's voice broke the silence, though it was still quiet and reserved. It's fine, you muttered, pushing your food around on your plate, unsure how to answer him. You didn't want to talk about work. You didn't want to talk about anything. Jungkook didn't press further. Instead, he picked up his own toast, chewing slowly. You watched him for a moment, noticing the small things you hadn't before. The way he always seemed to be in control, always composed, but never quite reaching out. Your thoughts were interrupted by a small voice. Yoma, can I show you my new toy? Jungsu appeared in the doorway, holding up a small action figure. His eyes were wide with hope. You froze, your stomach tightening. Not right now, Jungsu, you said, trying to hide your discomfort. Maybe later. Jungsu's smile faltered, and for a moment he just stood there, his eyes searching for yours. Okay, he said softly, and then turned to leave, the hope slowly draining from his face. Jungkook watched the entire exchange, his face unreadable. After a long moment, he looked at you, his gaze softening. You know, Jungsu really looks up to you, he said quietly, his voice barely above whisper. He just wants to be close. You shifted uncomfortably in your chair. I don't know how to be close to him, you admitted, your voice cracking slightly. I never planned for this. I never wanted it. Jungkook's eyes met yours, and for the first time since you had been married, you saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. I know, he said simply, but he's not just your stepson, he's part of this family. Please remember it. You swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. I don't know if I can do this, you whispered, more to yourself than to him. Jungkook didn't respond immediately. He simply stood up, pushing his chair back quietly. I'm going to take care of Jungsu, you take your time. As he walked past you, his hand brushed against your shoulder lightly, and for the first time it didn't feel cold. It wasn't affectionate, but it was something that made your heart skip. Later that afternoon, as he prepared a salad for lunch, you cut your finger while slicing vegetables. The sharp pain made you flinch, and before you could even react, you felt a small hand on your arm. Ouch, Jungsu said, his eyes wide with concern. Yoma, are you okay? You looked down at your finger, seeing the small cut bleeding. You sighed, trying to downplay the pain. It's fine, Jungsu, it's just a little cut. But Jungsu wasn't convinced. Hold on, he exclaimed, running out of the kitchen. You stared after him, confused. Moments later, he returned holding a small tube of cream. He held it out to you with wide, hopeful eyes. Daddy always puts this on his cuts. It will help. You took the cream from his hands, your heart twisting at the gesture. It was such a small, innocent thing, but it meant the world to him. His concern was so pure, so genuine, and you couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Thank you, Jungsu, you said softly as you applied the cream to your finger. Jungsu smiled brightly, his little face lighting up. You're welcome, Yoma, he said. His voice was full of pride. You watched him for a moment, his innocence and care making your heart ache. You had been so cold to him, so distant, and yet there he was, showing your kindness without asking for anything in return. You couldn't ignore it anymore now. Later that evening, you found yourself sitting in the living room with Jungsu watching cartoons. Jungkook walked in, and for the first time in weeks, you didn't look away from him. You saw the small, subtle things he did for you, always taking care of your needs without saying a word. Dinner is ready, he said, his voice calm, but there was something in his eyes that made you pause. He wasn't angry, he wasn't cold, he was simply present. You nodded, feeling a shift inside you. Thank you. You said the words finally coming out, genuine this time. You were beginning to see that maybe you had misunderstood him, maybe you had been wrong about him. And maybe, just maybe, you had been wrong about yourself too. The office had become unbearable in a way you didn't expect. The whispers about Jungkook's marriage were relentless. People were curious about the identity of his new wife, but no one had put it together that it was you. One morning you were sitting in the break room, scrolling through your phone, when Mina, one of your co-workers, walked in, holding a coffee cup in hand. She sat down beside you and smiled knowingly. You know, it's all anyone talks about. Mina began, casually glancing around the room. Jungkook got married. I heard he's been really different lately, like happier, more relaxed. Isn't that strange? You stiffened, your stomach dropping at the mention of his name. Happier? You echoed, trying to sound casual. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Yeah, he seems lighter, more approachable. Maybe it's the marriage. I heard he married some woman. Don't know who, but they saw. She's really good for him. Doesn't really match his usual serious demeanor though. Imagine that, Jungkook with someone who can make him smile. Mina chuckled, oblivious to your internal panic. You gave a tight-lipped smile, trying not to react. I guess people change. You said, your voice betraying nothing. Mina smiled back, sipping her coffee. Yeah, but it's still strange. Everyone's been gossiping. They are all curious, wondering who the lucky woman is. Some say she's really private, who knows? You felt your heart race. Was he really happier? Was it the marriage or something else? You tried not to think too much about it. This wasn't your life to explain to anyone. Later that afternoon, you found yourself in the same meeting room as Jungkook. The room was filled with colleagues and you had to focus on the presentation. But as soon as you walked in, the weight of the rumors about you and Jungkook's marriage made it hard to breathe. You couldn't look at him directly, so you focused on the papers in front of you. But when you finally did glance at Jungkook, his eyes met yours for a brief moment, and he gave you the smallest, faintest smile. It was almost imperceptible, but you saw it. During the meeting, someone made a casual comment about Jungkook's new, happier attitude. Mr. John, you have been a bit more relaxed lately. Could it be your marriage finally bringing some peace? One of the colleagues joked, looking directly at him. The room chuckled, but you saw Jungkook's face harden for just a moment before he cleared his throat. It's none of your business, just focus on work. With his sharp and demanding voice, everyone became silent. That weekend, Jungkook, Jungsu and you went out to the mall. Jungsu had been asking for a new toy for days, so you agreed to go shopping with him. As you strolled through the store, Jungsu excitedly picked up action figures and stuffed animals, showing them to you and Jungkook. Suddenly you froze. You turned to find Jungkook's ex-wife standing by one of the easels, arms crossed with a sneer on her face. She didn't seem surprised to see you. Her eyes flicked over to Jungkook, then back to you with something like amusement in her gaze. So this is what has been up to, she said, a sharp edge to her voice. Too much of a good thing, huh? Always smothering with love. I couldn't stand it. Jungkook's posture stiffened beside you, but he didn't say anything. You felt your heart race. The tension in the air was palpable. You glanced at him, then back at her. What do you mean too much? You asked, confused. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You wouldn't understand. He has always been like this, overbearing, too loving, always trying to do everything for me. He thinks that's how to make a marriage work, but it gets old fast. I hated it. You looked at Jungkook, searching his expression, but his face remained unreadable. It hit you like a slap. This was why she left him. She had walked away because of his love, the same love you had been so confused about. This was what drove her away. But why didn't you take Jungsu with you? Are you even a mother? The question left your lips before you could stop it, and you regretted it instantly. You didn't mean to ask so bluntly, but something didn't sit right with you. Her smile faded, and she looked away for a moment before turning back to you, her voice cold. Jiangsu, I'm not his mother. He was never mine. I didn't want him when I left. I left everything behind, including him. You couldn't believe. Your mind raced. Jungkook had never told you this part. Later, you three came home. You turned to Jungkook, who was still standing quietly by your side. Why didn't you tell me about this? You asked, your voice shaky with emotion. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. His eyes were dark with something you couldn't quite read. Finally he spoke, his voice steady. I didn't want you to feel burdened by my past. She left. I took Jiangsu in and I have been raising him ever since. Jiangsu wasn't your biological son? You asked, your voice soft. No, Jungkook replied, looking at you with a mixture of pain and calm. But he is my son now. She wasn't ready to be a mother. I adopted him when she left, and that's when it all ended. You stood there speechless. The weight of your assumptions, your doubts about him came crashing down all at once. You had misunderstood everything. Tears filled your eyes as you whispered, I'm sorry, I was wrong about you. I thought you were cool, but I see now what you gave up. Jungkook sighed, stepping closer to you. You don't have to apologize. I gave everything to her, but in the end she left. And I was left alone, but I have Jiangsu now. You bit your lip, holding back the tears. I shouldn't have judged you. I misunderstood everything. I believed rumors. Jungkook gently placed a hand on your shoulder. You don't have to stay in this marriage if you're unhappy, he said softly. If you want a divorce, I will give it to you. But if you want to stay, we can try to make this work together. His words hit you hard. You had spent so much time resenting him, assuming the worst, and now you realized just how much you had misjudged him. You took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside you. I don't want a divorce, you said quietly, your voice trembling. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I want to try. I want to give this marriage a real chance with you. Yes, Dad. Give Mama one chance. I want her. I love her so much. He asked Jungkook, holding his hand gently. Jungkook looked at you and Jiangsu, who was looking at him with teary eyes, as if he was going to miss his mother forever. Jungkook's eyes softened and he picked Jiangsu in his arms and pulled you into a gentle embrace. One chance, then he said, we will take it one step at a time. And in that moment you knew that you had found something real, something worth fighting for. Thank you for watching.